What if looking broke and getting rich were the same move? The people building real money in America are often the ones still using things everyone assumes they should have replaced by now. They do not out-earn the room. They outlast their own purchases. And once you understand how buying fewer, better things compounds into an actual fortune, the way you shop starts to feel expensive in a way you never noticed before. So let me show you exactly how it works. Because once the pattern is in front of you, your whole relationship with money starts to shift. The idea that spending more per item can leave you richer sounds like something a rich person invented to feel superior. The reality runs the other way. Buying fewer, better things is one of the most reliable wealth engines in the country, and it is available to almost anyone at almost any income, starting the very next time you open your wallet. Let me start with an uncomfortable truth. Most of us already know we should buy fewer, better things. In a recent survey, close to two-thirds of shoppers said that is exactly what they want. Own less, choose quality, stop wasting money on stuff that falls apart. Then the sales figures come out and tell a completely different story. As a country, we buy roughly 60% more clothing than we did at the start of the century, and we wear each piece far less before it goes in the bin. The average American now throws away close to 80 pounds of clothing every single year, and most of it never wore out. It went out of style. A button popped. It simply stopped feeling new. That distance between what we say and what we do has a name in my head. I call it the disposable trap, and almost everyone is standing in it without realizing. The trap is not one dramatic moment of overspending. It is the slow bleed, tiny, forgettable amounts over and over on things built to be replaced. Think about the actual life of a cheap purchase. You buy the $12 phone cable because the good one felt overpriced. It frays in 4 months, so you buy another, then a third. Within 2 years, you have spent more on failing cables than one solid braided cable would have cost, and you still do not own a cable you trust. Now run that same story across your shoes, your kitchen pans, your kids' clothes, your headphones, your luggage, the flimsy office chair that wrecks your back. None of these feel like money problems on the day you buy them. Stacked together, they form one of the largest slow leaks in a normal household budget. Here's the part that makes the trap so hard to escape. A lot of these products are engineered to fail. Companies learned a long time ago that a customer who buys once is worth far less than a customer who has to buy the same thing again and again. So the cheap blender gets a plastic gear that will strip. The budget printer is built around ink cartridges that cost more than the printer. Fast fashion is stitched to survive a handful of washes and no more. Studies show many garments today get worn only 7 to 10 times before they are thrown out, a steep drop from a generation ago. You are not imagining that things break faster than they used to. In a lot of cases, that is the actual business model. There is an old idea from the novelist Terry Pratchett that explains this better than any economics textbook. He wrote about a man who could only ever afford cheap boots. Cheap boots wear out in a single wet season, so he has to buy a new pair every winter. A wealthier man buys one excellent pair that lasts 10 years. Over that decade, the man who kept buying cheap boots spent more money than the rich man did, and he had cold, wet feet the whole time. Being unable to buy the good thing once turns into its own expensive tax. People remember it as the boots theory, and it runs through almost every category of spending in your life. Let me put real numbers on it, because feelings are not proof. Say a cheap pair of winter boots runs you around $35 and dies every year. Over 10 winters, that is $350, plus 10 separate trips to replace them, plus the misery of bad boots the whole time. A genuinely good pair might cost $190 up front and carry you through the entire decade. You spent less overall, you looked better doing it, and you never once had to think about boots again. The person who bought the expensive boots was not being fancy. They were being cheap in the way that actually works. This is where a simple tool changes everything, and the wealthy use it almost by instinct. It is called cost per wear or cost per use, and it is the number that matters instead of the price tag. A well-made coat that costs $240 and gets worn 240 times over several winters costs you $1 every time you put it on. A trendy coat that costs $32 but only survives 8 wears before it pills and sags costs you $4 a wear. The cheap coat was 4 times more expensive to actually use. Its sticker lied to you, and the math is what told the truth. Once you start seeing cost per wear, you cannot unsee it. That is the mental shift right there. The wealthy are not looking at what something costs today. They look at what it costs per year of service, and they stay patient enough to wait for the version that wins that longer race. And there is a second cost hiding underneath the first one. Cheap things do not simply get replaced. They pull other spending in behind them. A bargain printer needs endless overpriced ink. That cheap car needs constant repairs and burns more fuel. Flimsy furniture gets propped up, patched, and eventually hauled away and rebought. Every low-quality thing you own tends to drag a little train of extra costs along behind it, and you rarely connect those costs back to the original decision to save a few dollars. Then there is the cost almost nobody counts, which is the cost of storing all of it. The average American home has more than doubled in size since the middle of the last century, even as families got smaller. Self-storage has grown into one of the largest real estate categories in the country. We are literally buying bigger homes and renting extra rooms to hold the things we bought and stopped using. Clutter comes with a price tag of its own. It behaves like a mortgage on stuff, charging you rent every single month, whether you notice it or not. Now flip all of this around and look at what people with real money actually do, because the research here is genuinely surprising. For decades, the image most of us carry of a rich person has been the newest luxury car and a five-figure watch. The largest studies of American millionaires found close to the reverse. The majority of millionaires surveyed had never spent even 1/10 of $5,000 on a watch. Most were not driving the current year model of anything. Half of them had never paid more than the price of a modest sedan for a car in their whole lives. A quarter had not bought a car at all in the previous 4 years. Let me be fair about that research because it gets exaggerated online. It does not mean every wealthy person drives a rusted-out truck and refuses to enjoy their money. Plenty of millionaires buy new cars. The real finding is subtler and more useful than the myth. They do not chase the newest version of things, and they hold what they own for a very long time. They buy quality, and then they stop shopping. The shopping is the habit they let go of, and the shopping is the habit that keeps most people poor. There is a reason for that, and it comes down to one piece of math that decides who builds wealth and who never does. Wealth is driven above all by one thing: the gap between what comes in and what goes out. Researchers even named it exactly that: the gap. Your income barely matters once the gap runs dry. A large study of thousands of American millionaires found their incomes were surprisingly ordinary, most of them earning somewhere between a comfortable middle-class salary and the low six figures for the bulk of their careers. They were rarely the highest earners in the room. What they did was protect the gap and feed it into investments that grew. Meanwhile, more than a third of Americans earning over $100,000 a year report living paycheck to paycheck. Big income, no gap, no wealth. The paycheck lands, and the newest, nicest, most disposable version of everything absorbs it before the month is even over. And it gets worse with every raise, thanks to something called lifestyle inflation. You get a bump in pay, and almost without thinking, your spending rises to swallow it whole. A bigger paycheck buys a bigger car payment, a nicer phone on a longer plan, a slightly fancier version of everything you already owned. That raise vanishes into upgrades you stop noticing within a month. Researchers have found that someone who lifts their monthly spending by a modest amount with every raise, rather than investing it, can walk away from more than $1 million in lost retirement wealth over a career from that one decision alone. People who build real wealth do the reverse. When the raise lands, they keep living at the old level and send the whole difference straight into the gap. Their lifestyle stays flat while their net worth climbs. So let me show you what happens to that protected gap over time, because this is where buying fewer, better things stops being about saving and starts being about building serious money. Say the switch frees up $300 a month for you, not a fortune. Roughly the size of the disposable churn a normal household barely notices leaving. You take that $300 and put it into a plain, low-cost index fund every month, and you leave it completely alone. At a reasonable long-term return after 25 years, that steady $300 a month grows into around $250,000. You personally put in about $90,000 of it. The rest, more than $150,000, is growth you never worked a single extra hour for. That is the difference between spending your money and sending your money out to work. The cheap coat, replaced 8 times, gave you nothing at the end of the decade. The redirected money handed you $250,000. This is the piece the disposable trap hides from you. Every dollar spent on a thing that breaks is a dollar that can never compound. Wealthy people feel that lost future in their bones. When they look at an overpriced, low-quality purchase, they are not just seeing the price. They are seeing the grown-up version of that money, multiplied over decades, and they choose to keep it instead. There is one more distinction the wealthy make almost on instinct. They separate things that lose value from things that hold it or grow it. A brand new gadget, a trendy outfit, a leased luxury car, every one of them starts shrinking the moment it becomes yours. A quality tool, a solid piece of furniture, a classic well-made coat, these hold their worth for years, and some resell for close to what you paid. Then the money that would have gone to the disposable pile goes somewhere else entirely, into assets that actively grow. An index fund, a home, a small business, a retirement account. Most households fill their lives with things that shrink. The wealthy fill theirs with things that either last or multiply. It is the same money either way. The only real question is whether it leaves you for good or comes back larger. One path ends in a pile of things you no longer use. The other ends in a number on a screen that keeps climbing while you sleep. If this is landing for you, take 1 second and hit subscribe, because I break down the money habits nobody ever sits you down to explain every single week, and I would hate for you to miss the next one. Now let me show you the psychology that keeps us all falling for the cheap option anyway, because the numbers alone were never the reason we overspend. Buying something new gives your brain a small hit of reward. It feels good for a day, maybe 2, then it fades completely, and you are already scanning for the next hit. Chasing that feeling is a treadmill with no finish line. Owning fewer, better things gets you off the treadmill entirely. When your coat is excellent, and your pans are excellent, and your one good bag has lasted 18 years, you stop hunting for replacements. The mental noise goes silent. You are no longer shopping in every spare moment because nothing you own feels desperate for an upgrade. That silence is a real advantage, not just a pleasant feeling. There is a measurable cost to constant small decisions. Every time you weigh what to buy, what to replace, whether the cheap one will do this time, you burn mental energy that does not come back. People with fewer, better possessions simply make fewer of those decisions. They freed up attention that everyone else is pouring into stuff, and that attention flows instead toward their work, their families, and their investments, the things that genuinely compound. Let me name the trap most directly, because a lot of overspending is not about the object at all. Much of it is about the signal. We buy the newest thing to tell other people we are doing well. The problem is that the signal and the reality point in opposite directions. Showing off wealth and building wealth are two separate activities, and you usually cannot afford to do both at once. Someone financing a luxury car to look successful is trading real future security for a temporary impression, and that impression fades fast because everyone around them is too busy managing their own image to stay impressed by yours for long. The people who are genuinely secure figured out something freeing. They stopped performing wealth and started owning it. They let their old, excellent things stay old and excellent. A watch that still runs after 20 years no longer reads as a sign that someone cannot afford better. More and more, it reads as a sign that they understand exactly what money is for. Take my Aunt Cecilia. She drove the same well-kept sedan for 19 years and wore a coat older than most of her coworkers, and every one of them assumed she was just scraping by on a tight budget. She retired at 58 with more money than any of them, built almost entirely out of the raises she never spent and the things she never had to replace. Here is where the disposable trap turns genuinely dangerous, though, because it rarely stops at cash. it runs on credit. Look at the average American credit card right now. As we speak, the typical card charges over 20% interest, and new card offers have climbed past 23%. Americans are carrying more than $1.2 trillion in credit card balances, close to a record high. On an average balance of around $6,500, at today's rates, you are paying almost $1,400 a year in interest alone. That works out to nearly $4 a day, every day, just to stand still. Now, combine that with the disposable trap and you see the full damage. When you buy the cheap thing on credit and carry the balance, you do not simply pay for a thing that will break. You pay for it again and again in interest, long after it stopped working. You can end up paying 23% on boots that already fell apart, on a gadget already dead in a drawer, on clothes already sitting in a donation bag. That is the disposable trap wearing its most expensive costume. Nowhere is this clearer than with cars. So let me spend a moment there because it is the single biggest lifestyle purchase most people make. A new car in America now averages around $50,000, and the day you drive it off the lot, its value starts falling fast. Most industry data shows a new car loses roughly a fifth of its value in the first year alone, and close to 60% across 5 years. You are not just paying $50,000, you are watching a huge chunk of it evaporate while you make interest payments on the full amount. The wealthy tend to sidestep the very steepest part of that drop, and they hold the car long past the point where others would already be trading it in. Same road, completely different destination for your net worth. Before I give you the filters, let me settle the obvious question, which is how you actually spot the better thing in the first place. Quality is not always just the higher price, and marketing loves to blur that line. So look at construction. Can it be repaired, or is it sealed shut and disposable by design? Check the materials. Solid wood over particle board, full metal zippers over plastic teeth, natural fibers with real weight over thin synthetic blends. Read the warranty, because a company that stands behind a product for a lifetime is telling you plainly how long they expect it to last. And glance at the resale market, because the things that hold their value used, good tools, good bags, good furniture, tend to be the very things that were built to survive in the first place. So what do you actually do with all of this, starting tomorrow, on a normal budget? Let me hand you the filters the wealthy use, so this stops being a theory and becomes something you can hold. First, run the cost per wear test before you buy anything you will use repeatedly. Do not ask what it costs. Ask what it costs per year of honest use. A $300 item you will use for 10 years is $30 a year. A $40 item you replace every season is not the bargain it pretends to be. Let the longer number make the call. Second, use the buy it for life question. Before you purchase, ask whether a version of this thing exists that you could conceivably own for the rest of your life, and whether you can stretch to reach it. You will not always be able to, and that is completely fine. But asking reroutes you away from the disposable default and toward the purchases that end the cycle. Third, respect the multiplier. Before any big purchase, ask what else it will force you to buy alongside it. The boat, the extra room, the ongoing subscription, the maintenance, the accessories. When the true cost dwarfs the price tag, you want to know that before you commit, not after the money is already gone. Fourth, slow the impulse down. Give any non-essential purchase a waiting period. A day for small things, a month for the big ones. Most disposable buying is emotional, and it evaporates if you simply let a little time pass. The urge that felt urgent on Tuesday is usually gone by Friday, and the money is still sitting safely in your account. Fifth, and maybe the most freeing of all, buy one and be done. When you finally do buy the good thing, let yourself genuinely stop looking. Close the tabs. Walk out of the store. The entire point of buying better is that you get to quit shopping for that item, sometimes for years at a stretch. That freedom is the reward. Take it. None of this is about depriving yourself. I want to be clear about that, because this can start to sound like a lecture about never enjoying anything again, and that could not be further from the point. Buying fewer, better things is the opposite of deprivation. You end up surrounded by objects you actually love, that actually work, that actually last. Owning less did not shrink your life. It widened it. More money in the market, more open space at home, far less noise in your head. You come out richer in every direction that matters, including the one printed on your bank statement. The woman who carried the same well-made bag for 18 years was never behind. She was ahead the entire time, and most people simply could not see it because they were staring at the age of the bag instead of the size of her freedom. That is the whole secret, sitting in plain sight. Real wealth has almost nothing to do with the newest thing you can show off. What it actually looks like is freedom. The kind you spend years building while everyone else keeps watching the wrong thing. If you want to understand the deeper machinery under all of this, how compounding truly works, how a small monthly gap turns into serious money over time, how to set the whole system up so it runs on its own, that is the foundation nobody teaches you in a classroom, and I made a full walkthrough of the money lessons school never covered. It is the natural next step once this lands for you, and it will be waiting for you whenever you are ready. Before you go, I really want to hear from you because this is where the best part of these videos lives, down in the comments. Tell me about the one thing you bought that lasted far longer than anyone expected, the pair of boots or the tool or the bag that just refused to quit on you. Tell me about a cheap purchase that ended up costing you a small fortune in replacements down the line. And if buying fewer, better things has already changed something in your life, your money, your home, or your peace of mind, say so out loud, because someone scrolling past this very moment needs to read exactly what you are about to write. I read these, and I learn something from you every single time. So tell me your story. I will be down there waiting for it.